And when it comes down to it, your life's going to be a lot better if you do something you really love and enjoy and you're good at, like we're all looking for. And actually, I do see a lot of younger people really starting to think, this through, because even I think you've seen the same thing. You've got like people in residency coming to figure out how to buy real estate or to go into, some obscure job.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. As always, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to listen to another episode. This was a really fun podcast episode with Dr. John Jurica. He is an incredible board-certified family physician who completed his medical degree in family medicine residency at the University of Illinois. He began doing non-clinical side jobs early in his career. He was a hospital physical advisor, medical editor, medical director. He then worked as a CMO of a large hospital for over 15 years. And then he decided to partner and start up an urgent care in 2014, where he continues to serve as the co-owner and medical director. That urgent care has now grown to 4 clinics, and we talk about how you could start an urgent care clinic and what that may look like. And then in 2017, John started producing the weekly Physician Nonclinical Careers Podcast. He's been podcasting for over 8 years, where he presents interviews with physicians in unconventional clinical and non-clinical jobs, or folks that have income diversification. And I just had the honor to be on his podcast talking about investing in real estate and residential assisted living. So go ahead and give the Physician Clinical Careers Podcast a listen after this episode. And then in 2018, John created the Non-Clinical Career Academy, which is an online educational membership for physicians who are seeking non-clinical and unconventional clinical careers. This was a fantastic episode, and we talk all about different career paths that you may be able to take that are non-clinical or maybe a little bit less clinical. In fact, John has a list on his website of over 70 side jobs that you could consider. If you are a burnt out physician, if you are thinking, hey, maybe I need something else, maybe I need to do something else, maybe I'm being called in another direction, then this is the podcast episode for you. I would just ask that you share this with another physician colleague who may benefit it. That is how the podcast grows. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode with Dr. John Jurica. Jurica, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I am so glad to have you on the podcast today, all the way from Chicago. How are things going?
Things are going great. It's very nice and warm here. The weather's fantastic for a change, and I'm happy to be here with you, Alex. There's a lot we could talk about, and I've been looking forward to it.
Yep, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. It was great being on your podcast a couple of days ago, and glad to return the favor, and way more excited to learn about your journey than for folks to hear about mine. So we'll go ahead and get started. Do you mind telling folks just a little bit about yourself?
Well, let's see. I'm a family physician. I grew up in the Chicago area. I've stayed in the Chicago area my whole life. I went into practice after finishing my family medicine residency, kind of in the boondocks of Chicago. So I've always lived since I finished out in a very, like an exurb, you might call it, out kind of 3 or 4 cornfields from downtown Chicago. But it was great practicing there. It had a low key kind of environment. I did family medicine for a while. And then some of the things that I deal with a lot in my podcast and what I do on the side started happening to me, and it was burnout and stress and so on and so forth, the usual thing. And so I became interested in doing something else. So I ended up working as a medical director and then as the chief medical officer for a hospital. I stopped practicing completely for 3 years. And then I got an itch to do something different, entrepreneurial. And so I left my CMO job and partnered with someone who was looking for a medical director and a partner to start an urgent care facility, clinic, a series of clinics really on the north side of Chicago. So unfortunately, I had to drive 90 miles each way for the first 5 or 6 years, 15 times a month. But we can go into why I made that decision. But so I did that from 14 to, I'm still doing that. I'm a part-time medical director now. In the meantime, I thought, well, I can maybe help people with some of the things I went through. So I started a podcast and then started some online courses and some mentoring and did a couple of summits in the last 3 or 4 years on those topics. And that kind of brings you up to where I am now and let you go from there.
Awesome. That's awesome, John. Yeah, you have worn many hats, that's for sure. And it's been cool to hear about your journey. How did we've never had anyone on the podcast talk about owning a clinic outside of like maybe their own direct primary care clinic. What got you into urgent care and what kind of got you excited about owning an urgent care, co-owning an urgent care?
Yeah, I'll go and I can tell you about that. When I went into practice, I joined two others. I became a partner in that. So I kind of knew how to run a practice partially. I had another partner did most of it, but then I split from them, started my own practice, hired a couple of doctors, and then I went to the CMO thing. But after 15 years of working in the hospital, I just thought, well, this is how it really happened. Okay. I was sought out by someone else. So this is something I didn't plan. I was getting a little itchy. I was like, I've only got maybe one more major change in my life, from the standpoint of my career. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And someone reached out on LinkedIn. He was searching for a partner and a medical director for the urgent care center that he wanted to start. Now, he was in private equity, his brother's in private equity, and they were dealing with buying up urgent care centers. So I guess he had 5 or 6 years experience in doing that. And it looked so attractive to him. He thought, well, I want to get on the other side, start my own urgent care and maybe get enough clinics to sell in 5 to 10 years. So he's looking for me. He asked me, I thought, well, the distance is a little bit of a problem. We didn't have a clinic then, but I knew it was going to be way up on the north side of Chicago. And so we met and he kind of talked me into it. I had some ownership as a partner, which I didn't have to. I think I invested $25,000, but it was really just nominal for what I got. So he's definitely a general partner. He's the biggest owner. I think now I own 13%. But he said, yeah, the plan is to get this thing going over the next 5 or 10 years. We should get to 5 clinics at least, and then we should sell the whole thing, cash out at the end. And it sounded pretty good. Then there was that little thing called the pandemic that hit. Now that was not helpful. So they've kind of put things on a horizontal line for a while instead of an upward line. But I enjoyed, doing the medical director roles. I did work 15 shifts a month. So I was seeing patients 8 to 10, 12 hours a day when I was there. Weekends were the shorter days. But when I got a little bit older, my 10 years, had already passed, I explained to him, it's going a little longer than I thought it would. So if you don't mind, I want to step back as medical director. So I'm actually in the process of handing that off to another physician. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of, there's restrictions in certain states, Illinois included, that a non-physician cannot own a physician practice. Those are rules against the corporate practice of medicine. So in Illinois and a lot of other states, hospitals and physicians are the only two that can actually, quote, own a physician practice. So there was really no way he could do it without. So we actually have this weird setup where we have 2 different LLCs. One I own, one he owns. We have 4 bank accounts. It's very complicated, but it's worked. And so, to unwind, it's a little bit difficult, but I'll still be a part owner, a minority owner. And then I'll kind of fade off into the sunset and do my podcast or whatever. And hopefully at some point when this thing sells, then I'll get some kind of a payout that you would think I would know what that would be, but there's no way to know what that's going to be unless we were to actually do, an evaluation now. We have some benchmarks we can look at to kind of get a sense what that should be. So, fingers crossed that everything goes. But it's good. We have 4 clinics now and they run very well. We brought the billing in-house, so we're saving on that. The overhead is kept pretty much to a minimum, but it's high quality. And so I have a lot of faith in it. And that was why I made that big change.
That's great. What were some other challenges that you might have experienced with getting those clinics started and some things that you learned that helped you grow the practice?
Well, let's see. There's a lot of things. I'm not technically the managing partner, but we did a lot of things. We did everything to focus on the patient care, communication. There's certain things you can do with Google and Facebook and so forth where you solicit reviews, and if they're negative reviews, you intervene, and if they're not negative, you post them, and then you try and get the other ones converted. And we did everything from billboards to direct mail, but basically it's pretty much the basics of we saw every patient, within 20 minutes generally. They're usually in and out in less than an hour, and our prices are low. And we just participated in the Chamber of Commerce and did the things we could do to have a good image and communicate. And we participated in the community in terms of anything we could do. And it grew. There's been, how physicians are undersupplied now. And so it's tough. And so especially the middle age, 20 to age 30 or 40, they don't even want to go to a doctor. They just want to walk into a clinic, get what they need and get out. So that's kind of the reason that he was pushing for that in the first place. It's just one of those things that people are looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Looking for speed and immediate gratification, that's for sure. Do you feel like the urgent care market is something that you would say physicians should consider co-owning urgent care? Or is that something that you feel like maybe won't be as beneficial in the future as kind of healthcare is shifting a little bit?
That's a good question because, the first time I ever worked in an urgent care center was in 1989. I didn't even think, technically, I didn't even know what it was, but there was a hospital, a rural hospital. It had an urgent care center across the street from it, which we never knew. I was moonlighting there as a resident. Now, I didn't see any urgent care centers when I left that for years, but then they started to crop up. And I thought, okay, this must have played itself out. But actually, there's still a need. And you've seen a lot of new networks grow up. But what they're all doing now, they're in this consolidation phase. I mean, they're buying 5, 10, 15. There's some with 30 or 40 that are merging. So they have 100, So I think like for the small entrepreneur to do this on their own, it probably wouldn't be my first choice if I was looking for let's say a cash-based business of some sort, whether it's in medicine or outside. But there's probably other ways you could get involved, maybe with a network at some point is going to grow to maybe 8 or 10 and then sell. So yeah, there might be other opportunities that are a little better now than they were 15 years ago.
Yeah. Is that the ultimate plan? Take those 4 or 5 clinics, roll it up and sell it to a bigger company? Okay. That's awesome.
That was the plan. So every time I talk to my partner, it's like, okay, are we still on the same plan? And, he'd like to get to 5 or 6 because we're right now at 4. And there's other times where he thinks, I kind of like doing this. So we might have to figure out some way to buy me out, So I'm not really that concerned, because I don't really need to extricate myself. But yeah, I'm still thinking that he'll probably want to walk away and do something as well himself.
That's awesome. John, you've been podcasting since 2017, right?
I think that's right. It's 8 years. Yeah, 8 years.
That sounds about right. Public math. Yeah. That sounds right. What are some impactful stories that have stood out or lessons that you've learned from your guest over that time?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. I've done weekly podcasts for over 8 years. So I have 400 episodes. I've been amazed by some of the jobs that I didn't know existed and also what the jobs that the physicians really loved. Like I didn't realize there was such a thing as a medical director for a life insurance company or a CMO. And I met one guy who was an author and a CMO for a life insurance company and another doctor who was a medical director. I think now she's like a VP or something. And just listening to them, it's very interesting work. It's very intellectually challenging. It pays well. And it's hard to get those jobs because those people never retire. They might retire, but they don't leave. They don't jump around because the jobs are so awesome. It's like 40 hours a week or less. It's very easy. You have nice teams, good benefits, good hours. And so that was one. I talked to one guest who was a CMO for a Medicare administrative contractor. So I don't know if you've worked in hospitals before, although maybe, I don't know, military or not, but there's something called a MAC, and they're the ones that approve payment for Medicare for hospitals. And I know of that because when I was chief medical officer, I was always fighting with the MACs and fighting with the, what do they call them? They have judges that have to decide whether a case it can go to that level. Administrative judges that decide if you're going to get paid for, someone that came with cancer surgery or heart surgery or something like that. And I didn't realize that the MACs actually hire physicians. And a MAC is not actually the government, but it works for the government. And that's an awesome job. It's a remote job. The woman I talked to was working from home. She was like an academic obstetrician, gynecologist, maybe doing cancer care for, women. But she had to move because her husband moved, and she found this awesome job, great benefits, hours, work from home, flexible. So there's actually all kinds of jobs that people have never heard of out there like that. The other one that I have to mention this, I should say that this person and his business is one of the sponsors of my podcast, but the reason he's my sponsor is because I'm so enthralled with what he does. So this guy, he was a psychiatrist, and he actually started like a national string of psychiatry clinics. And when he got tired of it, he sold it. I have no idea the terms of that, but then he decided he wanted to do something else. One of the things he was doing on the side was he did medical legal consulting. He wasn't an expert witness, although he had worked as an expert witness as well, which he loved to do. But he created something that really no one had ever heard of before, medical legal consulting. And what it is being a consultant to attorneys for personal injury cases and workers' comp. And so that position is completely remote. You never have to go to court. Basically, you do chart reviews, you summarize the care of the patient, and you find out things that were missed, things that would lead to better payment, the need for, lifelong care. Sometimes, what happens, you get injured in a car accident, and they focus on the ER and your head injury. And lo and behold, maybe 3-4 months later, not only do you have a head injury, but you have depression as a result of the injury. You have, some injury to your leg, and you've developed what I used to call reflex sympathetic dystrophy, which has a new term, but a lot of people know that. And, so you can get a lot more money. Anyway, you just get paid, you work on your own schedule. And now he coaches to teach people how to do that. But I was this close to doing it because it just sounded so interesting and so flexible, and particularly something you can do while you're still in practice, or you could put it off and kind of use that as your segue into retirement.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's so many jobs out there. It's so unique to hear from you and hear some of these different, non-clinical jobs that exist, or even, some degree of clinical work still, of course. And so it's awesome because I feel like a lot of times folks feel like they're stuck and they feel like they have that golden stethoscope or golden handcuffs, and they're stuck in their clinical job and they don't know what to do and they're really burnt out. And there's options that are out there. Some of these really unique jobs may be something that works for you, where you can get some balance and work from home and still make a good income, or go to the office a couple of days a week, or just work on your own time. And so it's really cool to hear that these opportunities do exist.
Yeah, there's two things. First, the comment I want to make about that is that when you're in training, they don't want you to know that those things exist. You'll very rarely have a professor or a mentor or whatever tell you that, well, you look like you're a little fried, Keep in mind, once you're in practice, you could try some other things. They won't ever tell you that. So they keep it from us. That's number one, which is not good. And the other thing I was going to say is then we come up and we have these beliefs systems. And part of what I do when I'm talking to people, when I'm on the podcast, and certain guests will even focus on this, these myths that we have. And if it's okay, I'm going to go down those 5 myths just real quickly.
Please, I was going to ask you some mindset blocks. So myths,
yeah. And these are a little different, and they're just false beliefs. We all get like imposter syndrome. We get these psychological barriers and things that, I'm not worth it, or I can't do that. But there's these like mistaken concepts that are just wrong. Like there's no jobs for physicians out there that aren't clinical. Okay. That's obviously, we know that's bunk. I have a list of 70 minimum that are just titles, and that doesn't include all the variations on there. Some of those are self-employed, some of those employed by other people. And then another one is that I'm abandoning my patients. 90% of the non-clinical jobs you do, you're helping patients in some way. And matter of fact is, when I was CMO, I helped way more patients as CMO than I did as a physician. I mean, we were a top 100 hospital. I could show you on paper our mortality rate was lower. I probably saved indirectly or directly, dozens of patients every year just based on the quality of care. And that's true in all these jobs for the most part. What are the other ones? I might have to look at a list, but the things like I can't make enough money. Again, the baseline is you can't really hire a physician unless you can pull them away from their previous job. And if they're already working and they're making a decent salary, then whatever you're going to do is going to make a decent salary. And oftentimes, if you look at the hourly rate, you're actually making a lot more. A lot of the stuff that we do, those hours aren't counted. I'm in the clinic only 4 days a week for 8 hours. Yeah, but you work 65 hours a week. Well, how is that? And let's see what else. Oh, another one that comes up is, am I still going to be a physician if I do these jobs? Am I going to really still get the respect? Okay, number one, everyone that I talk to that has any one of these jobs, whether they're doing any clinical or not, is still called doctor for sure. But actually, in some cases, like for me, for example, so I was working as a family doctor in a hospital. I had no clout. I'm really, as a family physician, especially with some of the surgeons, the orthopedic, there's big departments, surgery and ortho, whatever. And when I became CMO, I was the one everyone was coming to. I felt like I was up here now instead of being down here. So so these things, they're just things we're not aware of. And when it comes down to it, your life's going to be a lot better if you do something you really love and enjoy and you're good at, like we're all looking for. And actually, I do see a lot of younger people really starting to think, this through, because I think you've seen the same thing. You've got like people in residency coming to figure out how to buy real estate or to go into, some obscure job. It's like, wow, how'd you even think through this? Do I need an MBA? What should I do? So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to see that pendulum start to swing. And I think it's really helpful. I think it's helpful for physicians. I think it's helpful for patients. Ultimately, I'm a firm believer that some degree of passive income, and I say that in quotations because nothing is truly passive, but some degree of passive income or some side hustle is going to make you a better spouse. It's going to make you a better parent. It's going to make you a better doctor. You're going to take better care of patients because you're not going to feel that like overwhelming weight if I have to see more and more and more and work more and, do more all the time in that physician job. And so I think it's important. And I think that, there's a lot of amazing resources out there like your podcast, White Coat Investor, Letty and Kenji with semi-retired MD. There's a ton of resources that are available now that folks can see like, hey, I don't have to just be in the clinic every day, seeing 20 to 25 patients per day, feeling overwhelmed and feeling that burnout. There are some other options. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I think it's going to be those doctors who really change healthcare down the road. I think having that extra space to step back and look at what's, quote unquote, broken and figure out, hey, how can we fix this or at least make this a better working system is going to be really, really important. So I'm just grateful for folks like yourself and those other folks that we're able to share what we're doing and help with that.
Along those lines, I want to put a plug in for something that I didn't really know existed like till a year or two ago. I think it started out as concierge medicine, but direct primary care. Oh man, if I was starting out in family medicine, I would jump on that bandwagon right now because I have talked to some of the docs doing that and they love their practice. It's just unreal.
Direct primary care is amazing. I'm actually gonna work at a DPC next once I get back from this Europe trip and just part-time, but really looking forward to helping the clinic grow and expand. And I love the business side of things too. So it's like this beautiful blend of business and still seeing patients and having time to spend with them and build relationships. And really, really looking forward to it. I love direct primary care. So I think that's a perfect example of folks having the courage to step out and say like, hey, this system is broken. My job is not as gratifying as I want it to be, and I want to take back some control. And so direct primary care is a great example of that.
Yeah, I'll have to have you on my podcast again after you do that because I just talked to the people I've spoken with. I mean, they really feel like they have time for their patients, they have close relationships, and that third party, just totally the insurance company is out of it. So none of those you have to worry about when you're billing. It's a major, and I think the system is going to fix itself or someone's going to come up with something because it's reaching the breaking point in terms of, I understand why patients are so disgruntled themselves. They're not really fulfilled when they come in for a visit. So
yeah, it's so tough when they feel like they're on the conveyor belt. And, I don't know about you, but myself, I love getting to know my patients and build a relationship with them and try and figure out, okay, like what's actually impacting their health. But when you have 5 minutes with them or 10 minutes with them, and it's just churn and burn, it's really hard to do that. And I think until we realize that primary care, preventative medicine, until we realize that needs to be the forefront and the cornerstone of the medical system in America, we're going to continue to have really poor health outcomes and really high expenditures and high mortality and all these sorts of things that we're seeing. My fear is that we as a country don't figure that out until it's too late. And I think we're getting close to that. I mean, look at the access issues that we're seeing now. My grandma was telling me that her primary care doc, just for like a annual physical, can't see her for 6 months, and for an acute issue, it's like 3.5 months. And and we're seeing that everywhere. Even in the military, we're starting to see those access times creep up. And so it's going to have to change. Helpful for the urgent care business for sure, but it's going to have to change. And it's heartbreaking that it ultimately leads to worsened patient outcomes. So I don't want to get on too much of a rant there because I could go all day long.
I'm pretty hopeful though, because there are a lot of smart people out there. People are trying different things. And I think, and the government knows that the cost right now is skyrocketing without really too much return in terms of improvement. So something's going to have to change. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hopefully there's a doctor there when I need him.
Absolutely. Just move down to Colorado Springs. I'll see you in the DPC.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good, John. Well, in regards to the podcast, so we talked about success patterns. We talked about some mindset blocks or some myths. Is there anything else that you've learned that's really stuck out over, the last 8 years as you've been podcasting and networking with all these physicians in terms of the Non-Clinical Career Academy and some of the things that they've done? Is there any other advice or anything else that sticks out?
Yeah, as far as things are changing, so I feel good about that. And there's a lot more opportunities and people are trying to fix these things. Everyone that really, if they stop and they look around and they network and talk to their friends and other people they may have went to residency with and training, medical school, they'll find that they found solutions. So there are solutions out there. there's no reason why you need to be, miserable practicing. You either should stop practicing and do something else in a measured way, or find something that, and clinically, that will make you happy and feel satisfied. So it's out there. So don't let your, your hesitancy and your fear of change stop you. There's a lot of resources out there. I actually, if you're really, really stuck, I think the thing is get a coach. There are hundreds of physicians who coach other physicians on career change, or even just in the life coaching and health coaching, business coaching, executive coaching. There's a coach for everything. And as physicians, we don't typically use coaches. It was routine when I was CMO. I mean, we all went to see an executive coach. Our CEO had one, and then he shared his with all of us. And we did, little mini masterminds once a month. And so there's resources, and you really just don't know what you don't know a lot of times. And so just reach out to someone, and if you need a direction, contact me. I'll tell you some of the coaches I know that are fantastic. But you can easily find a coach, sometimes that's all you need just to get over that hump. And then once you decide what you want to do, you just follow it.
That's great. And, I think not being afraid to take that next step, whether that is finding a coach or whether that is telling your boss, hey, I'm going to cut back a little bit. I'm feeling really burnt out and I need to have some space, or whatever that may be. I know it always feels, any of those conversations or decisions always feel so heavy. Then after you do it, you're like, man, that wasn't bad at all. Like, what was I waiting for? And so I empathize with everyone who's listening to this, that we're in your corner, and you can absolutely do that. John, let's pivot a little bit. I know you're kind of pivoting more towards real estate investing. You recently joined the Route Assisted Living Mastermind, so we're so glad that you're there. What sparked your interest in residential assisted living specifically?
A lot of fortuitous things happened. First of all, my wife opened a business 16 years ago, and it was a franchise. It was a home helpers franchise. So she was taking care of seniors in their homes, and both she, myself, our parents died in our homes. Well, in their homes, particularly mine. I have 9 siblings. And so my parents died 3-4 years ago, and we were all present at their bedside when they died. And that's how people want to really die. And they don't want to die in a hospital bed. They don't want to die in, another circumstance. And so your listeners are well familiar with other options for that. So if you could be in a home-like environment and be cared for at the end of your life. So that's why, and my wife sold her business. So that generated a little cash. And then I couldn't believe it. It was fortuitous that I heard through a podcast guest, through another podcast guest. I ended up finding you and hearing about this. Now, oddly enough, there's a physician who owns a, quote, nursing home in my town, my little town. Well, when I started looking into this issue, this family style kind of assisted living, turns out that's what he owns. Actually, he's already sold it to somebody else. And I didn't even know that it was, that type of facility. I think he has either 12 or 16 beds. And so I saw that. And then I heard about you through another guest. I think you spoke maybe at her one of her meetings or something. Anyway, so that has got me interested in this whole idea of assisted living and, the smaller kind of homey type of situation. So I'm going to try and figure out all I can and impart on my own and impart from you.
Hey, that sounds awesome. We're excited to have you in the mastermind and teach you more. And, there's such a huge need for assisted living as a whole. And we think residential assisted living is the best way to do that, to really provide that personalized care that folks need at the end of life and that community, which is beautiful. And I think you brought up a great point too. A lot of times these residential settings or these residential assisted living homes are right in your neighborhood or right in your backyard, and you don't even know it, which is really cool, especially when you think about it from the patient perspective of, nobody wants to leave their home, right? Especially towards the end of the life, they've lived in that home forever. It's heartbreaking to have to sell or to move, but it makes it a little bit less heartbreaking when you can still stay in your neighborhood and go into an assisted living home. And so that's another aspect that's just really, really cool about residential assisted living.
Yeah, I think a lot of families, they worry about their parents, but they don't have there's no way they can bring them into their home if they're not able to take care of themselves. And to have some place you can drive to in less than 30 minutes and visit them anytime you like. And so it's really got me excited. I want to learn as much as I can. And my wife is a great advisor because she really loves seniors. And that's what she did for a long time. And we're both, we both have obviously the healthcare background. And of course, I was on the board of a hospice for 15 years. I mean, so there's a lot of interlacing and overlapping of these things. And it just sounds like it's too good to be true. So I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. You and your wife are the perfect team when it comes to owning and operating one. So I'm excited to see how things go and excited to see you get a home and get that started and hopefully get more after that, which would be amazing. That's awesome, John. So let's talk a little bit about your platform in the podcast. And for folks who are looking to get out of their current job or want to reach out to you and learn more, is there a good way to do that?
Several ways. Now, the podcast, it's been out there. You can find it on any podcast site, but it's called Physician Nonclinical Careers. And, it's just, you got all kinds of things you can learn about if you're interested. Now, the website is out there too, nonclinicalphysicians.com. If you prefer, you can go there and actually listen to the podcast episodes. Sometimes that's easier. And you'll see a link there if listeners are interested, because there's like a freebie, a little download you can get that has 70 careers on it that you might look at and just jar, some thoughts in your mind as to, oh, that sounds interesting. I didn't even know that existed. So get that at the website. And then I have a membership. So I started doing, some lectures, and it's a combination of lectures and webinars and conversations with other people and put them on a site. So that's called the Nonclinical Career Academy. And those have been kind of piling up. I think there's like 30 products there, of some sort. So a lecture or an interview with somebody, that kind of thing. And I have a Q&A. I was doing Q&As weekly for a while. And so I have like 70 little 10, 15-minute Q&A sessions on there. So that's at nonclinicalcareeracademy.com. You can look at that. And those are the main things.
That's awesome. We'll be sure to put those links in the show notes as well. John, is there anything else you want to hit on before we wrap things up?
No, I think that's all. I would tell people that if they ever want to reach out to me, they can find me on LinkedIn, and they can just go to john.jurica.md@gmail.com, because people sometimes just call me or send me a note, an email. If they have a question, I'll just answer it directly, straight up. I don't do a lot of actual paid coaching. So if someone asks me a question, I'm going to give them my advice for free.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for doing that. And thanks for all the physicians that you've helped, and you've changed their lives, and you've helped them be more present with their family, with their spouse, and take better care of patients. So really, really appreciate that, John, and everything that you've done.
It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, with that, it's been Dr. John Jurica and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast, signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.